Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 63 of the Game Changers. I'm your host, Carla, for tonight's episode featuring Bob Harris, whose extensive knowledge and experience will provide valuable insights. We will engage in thought provoking discussions on various topics, so stay tuned for an enlightening show. I would like to express my gratitude to Evan, Iggy, JC, and the whole TSA team for their support in creating this platform for meaningful conversations with leaders and innovators in our community. Join me as I explore the stories and insights of our guests, especially in the realm of fantasy football. The Game Changers fosters a unique community, and I'm privileged to share this journey with all of you this evening. Regardless of your size or success, maintaining humility is always a valuable trait. Who is Bob Harris? Bob Harris is a well known figure in the fantasy football community. He is the senior editor at Fantasy Football Diehard, a leading source of fantasy news, ranking, and advice. Bob is one of the original founders of the site and has been involved in fantasy football since 1993. He has received several accolades, including the first ever Fantasy Football Writer of the Year award by the Fantasy Sports Writer Association, the FSWA, in 2005. Bob Harris cemented his legacy with his induction into the FSWA Hall of Fame in 2013. Bob is known for his informative and often humorous writing style, providing weekly updates, ranking, and analysis for both season-long and daily fantasy sports DFS players. He also hosts podcasts and videos, making him a go-to source for fantasy football enthusiasts. His journey in fantasy sports began in 1993 as the editor and webmaster of the TFL Report. By 1997, he expanded his role, becoming senior editor to the Fantasy Sports Publication Incorporation, contributing to some of the industry's most respected annals, including Fantasy Football Pro Forecast, Fantasy Football Diehards, Fantasy Football Chat Sheets, and Fantasy Football Draft Book. Bob's expertise was a cornerstone of the company's flagship website, Football Diehard. Today, he brings his unparalleled knowledge and passion exclusively to football guys, where he delivers expert insights to fantasy football enthusiasts. In addition to his writing, Bob is a familiar voice to fans on SiriusXM, which I always love to hear. You can catch him on the Football Die Hard show and the SXM pre-game shows on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Channel 83, and NFL Radio, Channel 88 through the NFL season. How are you, Bob? And thank you so much for coming tonight.
I'm fantastic, Carla. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the fantastic introduction. It's long. That's what happens when you get old.
There's more stuff. I mean, you are an amazing person to start with. And I am privileged and honored to get to know you for 3 years already. And thank you so much for coming tonight. And everyone is so excited to talk to you and engage with you through the chat. And I am so excited to ask you questions about your journey. So, reflecting on your journey, Bob, you've been in the fantasy football industry since 1993. What motivated you to start Fantasy Football Diehards, and how has the industry changed since then?
So, I think the thing that got it all started was I started playing in 1986 in a fantasy league, wow. And about a week into playing in a fantasy league, I said to the people I played fantasy with at the time, a small group of friends, that we don't have all the information we need to play this correctly. We're stabbing in the dark here. We're taking shots that we don't know the answers to. At that time, your injury report came out on Wednesday in USA Today, and you made decisions based on that. And by the time Sunday rolled around, as anyone who plays now knows, that there's an injury report every day. We know exactly what's happening at every single practice, all those things, and all those things we did not know. And it seemed to me we should know them if we really wanted to do this, right? So over the course of the following few years, that kind of played in my mind. And so I started figuring out ways to do that. And in 1993, I started as a business, and kind of that was the goal, was to give fantasy managers more information than they could get, or more timely information than they could get in their USA Todays, which was the kind of the record of note in those days. Was everything kind of went through the USA Today or your local paper. But the USA Today was a little more robust in its NFL coverage, so people just followed that. So that's, and that's been the big change. The seismic shift in the whole thing was the introduction of the internet, the World Wide Web. I printed this material out and sent it out via mail. I also sent it out in a fax. Wow. And part of that was giving the actual, up-to-date injury or practice information, who was practicing and who wasn't, on a daily basis. Like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I would send out that information via fax. And so the introduction, and so this all was not free. The internet kind of was. And so when the internet came along, basically one of my subscribers at the time said, "Bob, have you heard of the World Wide Web?" And I said, "No, tell me more." And he told me more, and it sounded really, really good. And it turns out it was. And I became quite adept at using the internet in terms of the technology and learning how to design websites and leverage some of the things that it allowed you to do. But the big key was, instead of spending money to, whatever I was spending to create the product, the delivery cost me next to nothing, because I sent it out via email to an increasingly a fast-growing subscriber base. Part of that problem, Carla, was I had to put a lot of effort into teaching my subscribers, dragging them kicking and screaming into the computerized generation. And, obviously there was a tipping point a few years. I think that was 95 when I really jumped in with both feet into the internet portion of it. And that was a big part of the battle early on, was teaching people how to access the material and then showing them the benefits of it.
It's hard, I still have issues with, like the AI stuff, the new stuff that we're having, like with the computers, with the internet and everything. And it's hard to keep up to date, which is really awesome to start something new for people that know nothing about the internet. It must have been hard for them. That's just an amazing, story. So winning your first ever Fantasy Football Writer of the Year award and being inducted into the FSWA Hall of Fame, they are significant milestones. How did these honors impact your career and approach to fantasy football analysis?
I don't know how much they did. So first of all, I was one of the founding members of the FSWA, and one of the goals was to, bring more visibility to the people creating content at the time and give some awards out and stuff. Didn't know I was going to win one right off the get-go. And part of that was, trying to set it up so there was a really, I want to say above board process to, kind of an anonymous process to judge the awards. That has been built on, by the way, by the great Andy Behrens, who took over. Emil Cadlick, the late Emil Cadlick, myself, Ryan Houston, Kirk Boyelis were the four founders. Ryan left shortly after we started, and Scott Engel came on board. And we worked really diligently to keep it all above board. Andy Behrens has taken that to new levels. And Mike Beacom, by the way, took over as president at one point. Also, he was the one who brought in, the academics into the judging process, and Andy Behrens has built on that. So I shouldn't overlook the great Mike Beacom for his contributions as well. But winning the award was, it was great. I don't know that I thought that much about it early on. The Hall of Fame thing was, it's super cool to be acknowledged. It kind of feels like something that should happen after you're done. And I was by no means done. I think this was in 2013, and I think there was, my feeling was, well, I still have a ways to go. I still think that today. So we'll see where it ends up. But look, it's obviously, great to be acknowledged by, your peers or the people that, do this in the industry. So yeah, I thought it was great. And I hope to continue building on it.
That's amazing. To start something and to keep that in mind, that I don't want to stop here. I want to go more and furthermore. I love that. And this gives a lot of people the opportunity to see what is Bob Harris all about. And I enjoy listening to this. So talking about FSWA, I know that Bob Long talks a lot about the expo and how you together as well. Like he talks about you when I sit and talk to him at times, that he asked you about the expo. You gave him some information, and you guys started that together. What can you give me about the expo? What can you say about the expo? And are you looking forward to go this year?
I'm always looking forward. I don't want to take any credit for starting it. I was there at the beginning. Other than that, this is all on Bob, but I was there, and it's been an amazing journey. The first one started, and it started, kind of before the expo. The King's Classic started, where a handful of us would make the journey to Canton and do our draft at the Hall of Fame, and that was a big deal. It seemed like at the time, but it was just us. There was no associated stuff, and so the year that Bob said, "Hey, I'm going to do a little thing," and okay, we've seen this before, and it seemed, like, I'm not interested in telling people they have bad ideas unless they're really bad, and this was not really bad. So I thought this will be interesting. Let's see how it goes. And I thought that first year was kind of a little community center, and there were probably as many exhibitors as there were people showing up to look at it. They were mostly local people, but it was encouraging. And I think it was a success, just in that, kind of set the tone for the yes, there's some interest. There's certainly industry interest. And I thought a big part of the fun at that was, meeting other, being able to network in person is great. As opposed to networking on the X or however you prefer to do it. And gives me a chance to use my best joke in my arsenal, which is every time I meet someone, I say, "Oh, you're bigger than your avatar." And everyone gets a great jolly laugh. But that's that first one was really good. And talking to Bob, afterwards, it was an emotional experience for him, as it has been everyone. I usually end up interviewing him on Sirius. It's the final thing he does, and my goal every year is to make him cry. Most of it successful. I think he's passed it though. Last year he did not give me a single tear, so I was very disappointed in myself for not bringing that emotion out. But anyway, yeah. So, and he'll call and kind of run ideas by me, and I generally tend to be encouraging because I think the expo has been great fun. I've been able to meet people. I like connecting with the audience is something I get to do pretty regularly through live streams or on the radio, taking calls. But this takes it to obviously another level, and getting a chance to sit down and talk to people. Here's the thing. I think the big secret is most of the people out there who are fantasy football players are every bit as knowledgeable as the rest of us. That we're kind of considered experts. I don't think we're experts. I kind of call myself a professional. One of my other great jokes is an X is a has-been and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So I try not to be either of those things. But I think just the connection with the audience and the chance to, rub shoulders with all the other content creators. And I think that's what it's become. That like the FSGA is a great thing. The Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association used to be the Trade Association, FSTA. And I've never been as big on that. Like there's people there, but it's more of a business kind of thing. And I am not business. I am content. And so the expo gives me a chance to talk, network, discuss, meet, get people on my radar. It helps me in my jobs in the past, doing the magazines. I'm looking for writers all the time. It allowed me to find these people and meet them and give people opportunities that, that arose. So I love that aspect of it, but also, the meeting up with people. And it just seems like every year there's there are more and more people. So it's been a great ride. We'll see where it goes this year, but I do plan to be there. Bob has some. I'm not going to give anything away. Some things up his sleeve to further further audience engagement, and bring it all closer and together. But
nice.
My favorite expo story is I do a podcast with Matt Waldman called "Feel It or F It," and the F is obvious. And we're just kind of giving quick takes on things. And I had a lady walk up to me at the expo a couple of years ago, and just out of the clear blue, "Are you Bob Harris?" I said, "Yeah." She says,
"Oh."
She says, "Calvin Austin, feel it or F it." So it gives you that little feel that you're out there connecting with the audience and that they're paying attention. Sometimes we feel like we're talking into the void or talking into our computers or whatever. And again, I feel like I've been really fortunate in that a lot of my work has allowed me to connect directly with audiences. This will be my 14th year on Sirius, and we've always taken calls that kind of keeps you grounded, but also, the various, social media feeds, etc. That helps as well. And I think that's, to me, that's the overriding thing, is to be connected and to stay relevant, even though I'm quite old and out of touch with most things. I want to stay relevant in the fantasy space. And so those connections help me out, and the expo is a big part of that.
Yeah, I agree with you, like 100%. So I meet a lot of people like you on X, and the human connection is totally different from the computer connection, because it shows the true person, their true self. So I saw you at the expo this year, and I was a bit overwhelmed trying to figure out, if I was doing a good job at the show. And your comment to me provided incredible support, and I was truly honored by what you said to me that day. Saying that, involving with women of fantasy football, can you tell me about your involvement and how and what inspired you to support the community, and especially women in fantasy football?
I think, I don't know if this is going to come off right, but I think the idea was just viewing them as equals. I don't know. I don't know any other way to put it. Like, we started, Emil Kadlik and myself started, we had women in our magazines, I want to say since the early 2000s. As soon as we started running across them, and we started running across them in Emil's World Championship contest, his high stakes games. And they're really good. Kimber Schleicher, Jules McLean have been longtime contributors to the magazine, and we've added to that. But I guess I just don't see it as, being something different. I think it's perfectly normal for women to be every bit as interested in football and fantasy football as I am, or anybody else is. And so there's a ton of great content creators that I feel like should probably be given better platforms, and we've made an effort to do that. But I mean, like, if you think women don't like football, you've not been in my house when there's a Minnesota Vikings football game on TV and my fiance is shouting, cursing, swearing, sweating. And I mean, it's like, yes, this is, to me, this is like, I feel like you always hear, like, it's like, why don't you, like, I don't know that I've ever looked at women differently in the business. And I know it's cursing Sam Darnold. That's exactly correct. I don't know. I realize there's a divide, and that maybe not everyone sees it like I see it, but that's 100% how I see it. I don't see the difference. I see the people I've worked with, the women I've worked with in this industry are, I mean, amazing. There is no difference. It's totally, we're all totally on the same footing. So I try to treat them like that and share platforms with them, like I try to do with many people. I think that's, one of the benefits of being old and having been around a while. It gives me an opportunity to share my platforms that I've built over the course of many years with people who I feel like deserve the platforms. And I don't hesitate to do it, because why? Here's why. I want to look smart. And the smarter the people I turn on the audience onto, the smarter I look. I mean, it's that simple, right? Like, in the end, this is very, very me-centric. This is about me. I want to look good. And looking good includes bringing on great people onto my platforms that make me look smart. And that includes many, many, many women.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, like I said, I came to you at the expo and you gave me a little boost of confidence, which I really love. And Greg is saying that you are smart. And Greg have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
So he was asking, how do you compare the success of the first expo with the old Fantasy Insights conventions in Vegas?
It was a way different thing. The convention in Vegas was more, it seemed like it ended up being mostly just us, right? And I guess that's what you should expect. It seemed like a bigger deal at the time. I guess that would be one way of looking at it. Like we're at the Tropicana and it's really cool. I designed a big old website for it. And we had some pretty high profile people there. I want to say Randy Cross, a CBS former 49ers center and CBS analyst. And it was cool. We held drafts and did things. But I think the expo is more grounded with the audience and more, I don't know if we were at the time ready to help each other out or to I want to say, like we were more frenemies at the time. We were very competitive back in the day, right? And so it was like a lot of competitors going at it. And, so, I mean, some of us got along really well. Some of us got along less well. And so I think it was just a different vibe back then and not in a bad way, just different. Right. And so the expo's been way more welcoming to both, I think maybe it's just, there's way more content creators and it just seems like more of a party vibe. And, Scott Ingles doing the karaoke thing, that kind of breaks all the ice. So, no, I think that's the difference. I think that's the difference. It was a smaller group. It seemed like a really big deal at the time. I think the expo has probably turned into a bigger deal in terms of at least the people coming, but also the opportunities to network with other content creators. Yeah.
And Greg, I have one more question to you. What about the use of fax machines? He was talking maybe when we were talking about, the stuff that you used to use before.
So sending out the faxes was kind of my edge. I had a couple edges, right? So I mailed out a 8-page newsletter and I tried to get that out at the door by Tuesday so people would have it by the weekend. Mostly they did. Sometimes they didn't. But if not, hey, here's a fax. And the facsimile early on. So this was a struggle. So there was a kid who went to the University of Arizona. I was based in Tucson, went to a journalism school there. His name was Steve Cohen. And he left the University of Arizona, went back and worked at WFAN Radio in New York. He was a producer for, what's his name? The big Mike Francesca. And he had all the information. So he would call me every day at a certain time and say, Harris, here's who's practicing. And he would run down the list and I would type it up and try and get it all on one page to save money. And I did. And we would send that out. And we'd have little lines in there. So-and-so could run in a straight line, but not cut. And so, by the way, Steve Cohen now is in charge of a betting network called VSiN, but for many years was up to this year was the vice president of NFL programming at Sirius. So he ran the NFL radio and the fantasy channels. And so he made something of himself. Congratulations to him. Even though I held him early on in his career and made him write for me for free. He wrote a weekly column for me. And so, but we would put that on the fax. And the first year I had a single phone line in my office. So I'm trying to set out faxes while people are trying to call me and say, where's my fax? And that would, as soon as the call came in, that would crash the fax line and make all the faxes even later. Well, the second year, a technology came out called fax broadcasting, where I could send a single fax to the company and it would put them all out at once. And that was a great help. But then it was only necessary for 1 year because the interwebs came along and solved all the issues and made life much easier for me. But yes, the faxing the first year was a challenge. It usually ended up with me having chest pains and tears as I sat in a puddle of my sweat, hoping they would all make it out before somebody called to complain.
That's crazy.
I also had a 900 number, which this was the big deal.
Really?
If you're an older person, you remember there were all kinds of phone lines that used the 900 prefix that cost you money to call. Most of them
Yeah.
had to do with companionship of some nature or another.
Oh my
Or,
God.
but mine was, I would read the box scores into this thing on Sunday night. So you would be surprised to learn how many people did not want to wait till their box scores came out in the USA Today on Monday morning to find out they had whooped their friends' tails. And they would call this number, and that phone number, the payments were kind of deferred and came after the fact. And so that was kind of how I survived, right? That was real money back in the day. $1.98 a minute, and people would listen for 10 minutes at a time. So while I read all the box scores, which I got off CompuServe, a early kind of like AOL, but before, and so that was kind of how I got by and paid my fax bills and things like that. So yes, there were a number of ways to do it, and yes, the industry has changed greatly, people.
That's awesome. I can't. That's really amazing. So on January 8th, you posted something on Facebook that you've been with your fiance as friends for 15 years. And so far, so good. So tell me, what's so far so good, and how is life with your fiance, especially that she is all into football as well, and the screaming and everything. And do you plan on bringing her for the expo this year?
We've been working on that, and perhaps at one point it will come to pass. So I knew my fiance and I went to the same high school at the same time,
Nice.
but I didn't really know her then, and I didn't really meet her, or get to know her at all until years later, at kind of a, not a reunion, but a kind of a gathering of old classmates in Tucson, Arizona, where we went to school. And of course, she chased me down and pursued me, like most everyone does know. But we kind of connected over on Facebook. After that, she's going to come out and throw shoes at me in a minute, so I need to be careful. If you see a heel flying past my head, but we kind of, we connected on Facebook like many people do, and so over the course of a few years, we got to, we the relationship grew out of that, and eventually we got engaged to be married. And at some point we might even do that, although I hate to screw up a good thing. Everything is going really great here. I moved from Albuquerque to Dallas to where she is, and we live together happily, and at least so far so great. That's what the post said. So far so great. So that's kind of where it's at, and she's a wonderful person who puts up with all the nonsense that I have to go through to do my job, including having a huge office in the middle of her house, because I didn't want to be locked upstairs, because I wanted to be part of the world. And it's a big change for someone who goes from having a normal life to having Bob Harris sitting in their house yelling at people on the computer and on the radio many hours every day.
But that's what love is, isn't it?
Apparently so.
Yes, I love this. I love it. So we were talking, about me and you before the show, about what we want to, address on the show, and some stuff came up. And I know that discussing personal struggles and triumphs can be deeply impactful and resonate with many listeners. So, Bob Harris, you went through touching personal journeys, not just one. You had a lot of journeys to go through. You had challenges, and you found out that music played a big role in coping and healing.
Yes,
And
music is great.
Can you share how all your struggles came back to music, and what can you tell our audience about it?
Well, more like music is something that I enjoy immensely, and I have enjoyed. I've been playing music for many years. Since I was 10 years old, I became a drummer, and much to my parents' dismay, I don't know why they allowed me that thing, but I, and I have not played drums much for the last number of years because it's not very popular. with fiancés or anybody else. Let's be honest. Nobody likes the drumming. But I do have the drums, and at some point I'll break them out. But over time, kind of switching and playing in bands for many years, you kind of pick up other instruments. I can play guitar and other things as well. But I love music, and it's a big part of everything I do in terms of my radio show. When you hear the music going in and out of breaks, that was my one demand to Steve Cohen. I picked the music. And I'm a very big fan of hard rock, and that would be a mild way of putting it. Heavy metal would be a better way of putting it. Death metal, all metal, any metal you can serve me up, I'm very happy with. I like all kinds of music, but those are, that's my preferred lane. And so yeah. But I think more than that, it was the fantasy football that kind of helped me stay on track through the various, I have an addictive personality. And so I have, over the course of time, become addicted to many, many things. And I've stopped them all. And I stopped them mostly because it's kind of like you get addicted to one thing. If you can replace that addiction with another thing, it's probably good. So I went through a series of things, alcohol, various drugs. And then I found fantasy football, and I stopped all those things because I focused on that. Unfortunately, doing that, I became I quit taking care of myself, and I got addicted to eating. And so I, ballooned up to many, many 100 pounds, probably about 4 of those hundreds. And so I had to fix that. But I think that's having something that fills your time in a positive way makes it easy. Like, I've quit all the things that I've quit without any formal rehabs. I've just done it by deciding and by filling that time, or filling my mind with other things. And all those other things have been fantasy football. So that's been very helpful over the course of time. And, music kind of has been there all along, but the fantasy football, the job, having a job that requires a lot of time and energy is very helpful in limiting the things that might keep you from, might allow you to go astray if you weren't doing them.
So how important do you think for like someone like you, like a public figure, to share their personal stories of overcoming adversity? What impact does it have on your audience when you talk about this stuff?
The feedback is generally positive when you do it. I mean, I'm not looking for the attention or anything, but I mean, it is something that happened. And so I'm trying, like if I feel it would be helpful, I mean, it's like, it doesn't help everybody. I've had a nephew, succumb to addiction. He couldn't have stopped. And I talked to him constantly and told him where this was heading, telling him he was going to be dead, and he couldn't stop. And not everyone can. And so sometimes I feel like, I don't want to press the case because I did just stop. And I'm unusual in that. I think more people need help. And so if you need help, you should go get the help you need and try to overcome it. If part of that help is talking to people who have overcome it, I am here and I can do that. But I think it's kind of a different journey for everyone. So I almost feel like I'm lording it over people and say, well, I just stopped. What about you? Well, not everyone does that. Not everyone has something that can fill their time. And I don't want to overstate the case, but I'm kind of a different person, right, than a lot of people. And so, I think the big thing is, though, if you're wanting to do these things, I think the bottom line to me has always been one thing. You have to decide. Until you decide, nothing happens. However you're going to do it, whether you think you can do it on your own, whether you need help, whether you talk to people, however you do it, until you decide to do it, none of that matters. You can go through, I've known people who've gone through 10 rehabs and come out and do the same stupid things because they never decided, right? So that decision is what makes the difference. You have to be the catalyst, no matter what the mechanism or the process you follow to get to the end of your journey. You have to be the one who says, I need to do this. It's time. Yes. I decide. Once you decide, and like I've talked to people, I've heard people, I don't want to call out people, but I think everyone knows Evan Silva went through a thing where he, had to take a step away, and I think his drinking was an issue. And I could hear in his voice when he explained it on his podcast. I heard it. He decided. You could hear it. I mean, it's
Yes.
it's obvious when people realize they've hit that point, and whatever that point is, or wherever, however you get there, that tipping point, that decide time, that is the key. You have to make the decision, and then you follow it up with the actions that make it possible. And I will suggest that, in my case, many of the things were, ending relationships that were, created codependencies that made it easy for me to backslide. Uh, and so all these things, I mean, it's so multifaceted. There's so much that goes into it. I mean, it's a complex circumstance that takes us to those places. It takes equally complex solutions to get you out of it. But for me, it wasn't that complex. It was pretty simple. I've got to end these relationships. I've got to stop putting myself in front of the things that are clearly trying to kill me. And part of that is convincing myself that the next time I do any of the things will probably be the last time ever. I'm a pretty big zero tolerance guy, which is one of the things that has been helpful to me, is like, I'm not doing this, and I'm very stubborn. So all these things kind of factor into it. But I think if people are out there struggling, I think the point you have to get to is where you decide, whatever it is. And for me, it's been every damn thing, right? Everything. I mean, down to overeating. I mean, all these things, you have to get to a point where you say, that's it. I'm done. I'm doing it. I'm doing a different thing. And finding the thing that will fill the void is a very important part of that.
I agree with that, because if you don't find something that fills the void and to move forward from there, you're not gonna support that I'm done. And talking a lot about mental health and personal well-being, even for guys, it's really important, especially in the fantasy football community. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Bob, because there's a lot of listeners that they are struggling, but they cannot talk and say something. And for a personal a figure like you, someone that's known to the community, to come out and say something to them, I think you're leading by you're leading them to do something good for them first, and then for everybody else. And I really appreciate it. So, and Dan was asking a question as well. I'm gonna go through this before we continue. She's saying, what's something you do in the off season that you love, but it's not fantasy football oriented?
I don't know if there is an off season. But there are things I love. I mean, I've enjoyed traveling. I hope to do that again this off season. That's been very fun. I enjoy catching up on some reading when I get the opportunity. I like to watch some shows or whatnot. Everyone talks about shows they watch, and I don't really watch any shows during football.
Yes.
So that's kind of nice. Spending a little bit of more time with my fiance, who is again very patient and probably enjoys not having to put up with me as much during football as she does the rest of the year. But those things,
Tell me about it.
Right, so those are the kind of things. But I'm hoping to get out again and have made some really great trips in the past years, and would like to do that again.
I love your pictures. Like, you take half of your face and the background when you go to a trip. This is something that I wait for it every single time we travel. So what's the story behind it?
I like watching people, and I think there's no better place to watch people than at airports. There is the wide range of emotions and circumstances. There's angry people, happy people, and everything in between. And it's just and for some reason, I'm not a very relaxed person, but I am very relaxed at the airport because I just sit there and I watch all the people. So I like to share pictures of myself watching people because number one, it kind of casts me in a creepy light. And I think I need more creepiness. I need to be viewed more creepily, I guess. But also, it's a fun place to me. There's so much going on, and everywhere you look, there's a little story unfolding, right? And like sometimes you kind of watch that story unfold and to a either happy or unhappy ending, and like there's just so much drama and so much fun at an airport. I love it, and I don't really care if I end up anywhere or not, as long as I get to sit around and enjoy the scenery.
I love that. So after being a cornerstone at Football Die Hard, what motivated you? What motivated your move to football, guys? And how has the transition been for you?
So the transition's been fantastic. It was a great landing spot. So after many years, I had worked. It was me and Emil Cadlick worked together, and so he last September, a year ago September, said, "Oh man, I've been diagnosed with cancer." I said, "Oh no,"
Oh,
and so he's he said, "Well, let's get through the season and see where it goes." And as the season went on, and it was pancreatic cancer, and so the outcomes generally aren't good for that, but he battled through the season and we made it through that 2023 season. But it was, it got dicey at the end, and he was ready to stop. And he told me, I want to say in like October, probably somewhere at the end of October, early November, like I'm gonna have to stop after this year to focus on my health and or my recovery if possible. And you're gonna have to find another job. I said, okay. So in the moment, like, you know, I'm like, I take this, I don't take myself very seriously, but I take what I do fairly seriously, right? You're delivering a product to people and they expect to get it and they're pretty demanding. So my goal for the remainder of the 2023 season was to make sure that anybody who was a customer of ours had no idea anything was going on behind the scenes and to finish the season strong. So I didn't really think much about what my future would hold. But there came a point in December where it was looking a little more bleak for Emil, and he was saying, "Hey, maybe I suggested maybe we should sell some of these assets to help set your family up and do things like that." And so he agreed. So I started reaching out to various people in the industry to see if they would be interested in buying the magazines and the site and all those things. And one of the people I talked to is Joe Bryant, who I have a long history with. And going back to I think Emil and I published his first article on value-based drafting in 1996. And so, man, I've done work with him and been part of Football Guys in the past. Through Emil, we kind of contracted our content out. I designed the first Bryant Boats website back when Joe was in the boat business. I designed much of the first Football Guys website. I designed a lot of websites for people back in the day.
that's amazing.
But there were some times where Joe, Joe was trying to hire me a few different times that didn't work out, and he could have been bitter and unhappy about it. Instead, he just kind of kept connected and always, like even like at the expo before I knew Emil had cancer and stuff. Before any of this was coming up, the last expo, I mean, he just called me and says, "Hey, buddy, let's go grab breakfast." I mean, he was always staying engaged with me and stuff. So when I called him, he kind of said, "Well, I don't know if I want to buy a business, but what are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." So we started talking about it and kind of had it all sorted out in pretty short order that I would go there. And I think, it's almost like, falling, like I had no idea what I was going to do. Right. No idea. I like, am I going to be cobbling together? Am I going to be a freelancer? Am I going to, what am I going to do? Is someone be interested in hiring old people to do this job for I had just like totally no idea. I figured I'd keep doing my radio show as I have, but beyond that, it was seemed pretty uncertain. And then Joe basically said, "Well, let's see what you do. I don't know what you'll end up doing, but we'll figure it out." And we did. And I do
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff, and it's been fantastic with a great group of people. It's a whole different world of going from working with a single person where we just kind of knew each other, Emil and I, over the years, and the division of workload was pretty well defined. We just kind of knew it, right? Like, hey, I
Yeah.
do this part, he does that part, and then every couple months we'd say, "Hey, are we almost there?" Yeah, and we're talking to him every day and just doing things. So it was nice to have a family-like atmosphere to fall back into in Football Guys, where it's like a fantastic staff of just a fantastic group of people. Not the least of which is Joe Bryant and his family. Who are all part of the business, by the way. So that's great. But also the other people there that, my colleagues that I work with, many of them are old friends. Matt Waldman, one of my closest friends, on and off the field. So that's great. Sigmund Bloom, Cecil Lammy, people that I've known for many, many years. And some of the newer guys, Dave Kluge and Alfredo Brown, Jagger May, Jeff Bell. I don't want to start listing people because I won't list everybody, but everybody is fantastic. Rachel, some of the new staffers, Rachel's out in the audience. Joey Wright, just so many that just make it fantastic, a fantastic place to work. And so I feel super fortunate to have landed there, and probably will look to work there for, I don't know, I've been in this business 32 years. Another 30 would be great.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, I met I think Joe at the expo as well. This was my first time meeting him. Like everybody is really amazing in this community, and I love meeting new people and learning more about them. So, what new perspectives or insights do you bring to football guys? And how do you continue to innovate in your analysis and content?
I bring the old man energy for sure. Other than that, no, like I think that's
Stop.
that's
Stop.
no,
You're
this
young.
is this is the key. Well, not actually, but okay. No, this is the key, right? Like, so the key is always being evolving. Joe makes a joke, and it's not untrue. He doesn't know if he could get hired by his own website right now.
Really?
Like, and I feel like I've been grandfathered in because I started doing this in 1993, and I built a reputation. I mean, it's tough out there in the mean streets of the Twitterverse and whatnot, trying to gain a little ground, get a little attention. I feel like that's built in. So I'm working, in a different spot than other people are trying to garner that attention. But also there's a ton of super smart people in this business who do really next level kind of things. And so, I think one of my kind of lanes all along has been, sharing that kind of information and compiling and sharing information from other really smart people with my audience so they don't have to go out there and hunt for it. Well, it's a much more target rich environment for that for me because there's just so many high-end thinkers out there. We've had, lawyers and data scientists and just endless engineers and all these people who have come into this business who have come up with great things, and software type people and coders who know how to do things that help and assist you. And I think the AI is coming. I'm going to have to sit down with Ronnie Evans here at some point soon. And I've started using that and working on like, how can that help me? Can it look at my rankings and compare them to the results and say, what are you doing wrong over the course of, this many weeks? Here's what you keep doing. You keep making the same mistake. Maybe you want to look at that. Right. And so just like trying to figure out, ways to leverage technology and the information that's available from all these smart minds. I think that's kind of where my, what my skill is, I think is more than, innovative thinking in that regard. Although like I've innovated plenty of things, right? I've had my turns. So I don't want to sell myself short, but I'm not in the same league as some of these people out there doing stuff now. So I love to gain an understanding of what they're doing and try and incorporate their work into my work and better serve my readers who, like, I think there's a lot of content created for content creators. And I get that, but I want to work for my audience who are not all necessarily having all this time to sit around and study up on this stuff. Maybe they only have a few minutes. We did a podcast this year called the Daily Update Podcast. It's 10 minutes, just a 10-minute bit of news and sometimes that's all you have, and you just want to keep up to speed. You've got a busy life, a job, a family, all these things that kind of demand your attention. I want to help you get to where you need to be in as little time as possible. You don't need to sit out there and scour every internet website and every X feed and all those things. And I'm going to try and compile the most important parts of it. And so I think that's a big part of what I bring. And also, just like, I don't want to overstate it, but just like bringing a logical approach and kind of helping, one of the things I like to do on my live streams and on the radio show is make sure people realize that this is their team and they want to get answers to questions, and I give them the answers to their questions, but also a lot of what they're doing, they already know the answers. Or when I hear the question is really the answer. Like, I have this guy, but I think I understand what you're saying. And, so like we always joke about it. Most every question is essentially, am I crazy if, you try to guide people, but I try to, like, I can't answer every question. You can't answer every question out there. So you try to use the questions you can answer to make a broader point and help people understand the thought processes involved. And like, I'm not pretending to be the smartest person in the room, but a lot of this is just simple logical, deduction where you're looking at a situation and you're trying to figure out, look, we're playing fantasy football. We're predicting the future. This is tricky business, people. It's not easily done. And especially when we're dealing with a sport where the the very basis of it. The ball is an oblong spheroid that's designed to bounce in funny ways, right? Like that's the starting point.
Yes.
We play with a ball that bounces weirdly.
Yes.
So, and all the other, variables that come into this, getting people to start to think of their players and their team and the games is having a range of outcomes, not an outcome. Like, and we look at like matchups or players or in certain situations or positions and say, that's going to be a great week.
Yes.
Well, they're in a position to have a great week. Doesn't mean it's going to come out that way. That's why they play the game every week. There's why the NFL is designed to be this close every darn week, right? They don't want the outcomes to be predetermined.
And some injuries and whatever
right.
it happens.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to help, you want to help people understand that, like, I think I'm right, but I don't know for sure. Like that's the biggest thing. I think people are looking for right or wrong, where you can, right and wrong are evolutions. Season for the first 4 weeks, I could be totally wrong about a player and end up at the end of the season being spot on right.
Yes.
Right. That's the journey of it all, because there are just totally unexpected outcomes along the way, and helping people understand that that's perfectly normal and that everything you expect to happen doesn't happen, but you still play the odds. It's a game of odds. You're playing the most likely end of the range of possible outcomes, realizing that the anything is possible within that range.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with you. And you're saying that you're not the smartest person, but for me, saying that you're always there to learn, you're always open to get new informations and new stuff. That's what makes you special. That's what makes you smart and the person you are, Bob. I love that you're always open to like get more informations and like study more about everything, because without it, if we're gonna say we're perfect, there's nobody perfect.
Yeah, having the humility to acknowledge you're wrong is like, well, for starters, is everyone in your audience. You're not fooling everyone. They know you're not right all the time because they're not right all the time. And I do. This is the biggest thing for me in this business is like people out here watching this live stream who come to my live stream, call my show. I think most of them probably think in the back of my mind, I could do this every bit as good as he can. I could do the same job as he's doing if it weren't for some quirk of fate or whatever. And they're not wrong. Right. Like, I mean, if they followed that path, I mean, this is not actually rocket science. It's fantasy football, and it's accessible for everybody. And, you can work on it and become better at it and enjoy all the fun of it without having to be, a so-called expert or spend every waking hour steeping in the topic like we do, like I do. I mean, that's, but that's the joy of it is it's for everybody. Everybody can play and everyone can be really super smart at it and have great success at it. And that's what makes it fantastic. That's why we all love it.
Yeah, I agree. So you're a very familiar voice on Sirius XM, which I always love to hear your voice when I'm in the car driving with Doug Orth everywhere for basketball. So with shows like Football Die Hard and the SXM pre-game shows, how did you get involved with SiriusXM at first? And what do you enjoy most about broadcasting live to fantasy football on this?
So I've been doing radio hits for as long as I've been doing this, going back into the 90s where, you'd call up a radio or the radio station would call you and you do brief hits. I want to say in 2004, 5, 6, somewhere in that range. David Dodds of Football Guys at the time was doing one with a radio personality in Jacksonville, Florida named Mike Dempsey. And one day David Dodds couldn't make it. So he called me up and said, I don't feel good today, Bob. Can you fill in on this show with me for Mike Dempsey? I did. Mike Dempsey and I hit it off. We continued doing his spots on his show in Jacksonville. That kind of grew up into once a week. We would do almost a whole show just dedicated to fantasy football. His station let him do that. And at some point, Steve Cohen, the aforementioned kid that used to work for me for no money, and then went to WFAN and then ended up at Sirius, was looking for a host for the fantasy sports radio show that he had with a player, Maurice Jones-Drew. who is based in Jacksonville. So Steve Cohen's out there listening to audio from shows in Jacksonville, and he hears me doing a show with Dempsey. And he calls me up, Harris, what are you doing this show? I hear you with this guy with Dempsey. I think I'm going to hire him to do the Maurice Jones-Drew show. And he did. And so Dempsey did that for a year. And then about a year into that, I went and talked to Cohen. He said, man, me and Dempsey should do a show. And he said, Harris, I think you're right. And so there you had it. So we've been doing that ever since. I think we're going into our 14th year, and it's been fantastic. It's super fun. It's a great, for me, like you're sitting here, I mentioned steeped in the topic. I would sit here and work all day, and you're kind of in a torrent of information coming into you. That 2 hours a day I get to spend on the radio talking through all the circumstances and situations and all the news, and kind of, it gives me time to process it kind of verbally and, get it locked in my head, what I think about these things. And it's kind of been a great part of the process for me, being able to say, okay, here's 2 hours just to kind of sort out everything I think I know. And I come to all kinds of conclusions, and working with a really smart guy like Mike Dempsey, sometimes he changes my mind, or I change his, or we kind of come to conclusions based on our conversations or the calls we get. So it's been a fantastic run. I've been doing the pregame show, I think, for that entire time, and I'll be doing that again next year. I'm already, I'm already looking forward to that. I do that show with Jeff Mans, and that's been a ton of fun. And I've done it with other people, over the course of time. But doing it with Mans has been a ton of fun. So I feel super fortunate to get to be out there sharing my thoughts with people, and hopefully helping them kind of figure out their lane and understanding they're not crazy.
We're fortunate. So what are your future goals and aspirations for your career in fantasy football analysis and broadcasting? Are there any new projects in the future you are excited about?
I'm sure there are. I'm starting to dabble with some things in AI. Not that I want to use it to create content, but I want to use it as a tool, like many of the other tools we use every single day. But I don't want to be. I've told this to Ronnie before. I don't want to be the candle maker when the incandescent bulb comes along. I want to understand and know how to leverage these technologies. But also, just kind of being open to what's coming on. I think that's something I've done all along. Greg Kellogg and I did a thing called the webcast. We called it back in 1998, which was some of the first fantasy football audio on the internet. And it was not easy to do. It was a bit of a chore. And so like I've always been open to and embrace the technology, whether it was even like in the designing websites. I think there came a point where, like, look, I'm writing 50 articles a day, and I've got to format each one for my website. Well, I started getting into the dynamic database driven content that is the norm. Everyone uses it now. Back in 1998, 99, I was the only person doing that. And look, I could write 100 articles a day because I'm not formatting the 50, and it doesn't take me all that time. So I've been really open to embracing technology and trying to learn to stay ahead of the curve on it. And I imagine I will continue to fight that battle to the best of my ability. But like I said, I'm 63 years old, and I'm looking forward to another 30 years of fantasy footballing or more.
Knock on wood. You should write a book, by the way, about fantasy football. And
I would have to stop writing about fantasy football long enough to do it. I'm not going to have that nonsense.
Yes, it's going to be amazing if you do it. So before I finish the show, I always ask that question. What do you have for us that you never mentioned before? Maybe a secret or something from, an early age that you did it maybe once and you forgot about, and you never spoke about it to anybody.
Well,
I am the game changers.
I've heard some of these, and some of them have been fantastic. I'm looking at you, Andy Behrens. Oh
my God, yes.
but I didn't think of something in advance. But so when I was a young person, I grew up around animals, cows, and like on a ranch, and I hauled hay with my dad and did things like that. So I helped deliver baby cows, which included, having to sometimes reach inside a cow to get the baby cow that was maybe coming out the wrong way. So I have been a bovine obstetrician at times in my life. I think that's unique, unusual, and I'm proud to say I've done it.
It is unique. That's an amazing, amazing thing. I wanted to be really respectful of your time because I know that you have just half an hour to get ready for your next show. So
I
I
do.
don't wanna like end that because people are, waiting for Bob Harris. They want to hear more, but I want to really be respectful for
I
that. So
appreciate.
before I conclude, Bob, please inform our audience on how they can connect with you and your social media presence.
Well, you can find me on all of the social medias at Football Diehard, whether it's the X, the Blue Ski, the Instagrams, not the TikTok. Don't do that because I don't know how. But all the other places, I am there and available to be reaching out. The Threads, I believe, is also because it just does it for me. I don't have to do anything. And you can find me on the Facebook. I saw Greg ask earlier about my making Facebook great again, one song at a time campaign that's been going, I believe, now since this came about with the start of the. Seemed like everyone was just arguing about politics in what was it 2015 or so, and so I just started posting a song every damn day, and I've done it. I don't think I've missed many days since then because I'm a creature of habit, and I tend to be stubborn and and so I that's been a I think music makes everything better, and so I don't know that it's made Facebook any better or worse, but it's made me happy, and that's sometimes all that matters.
It matters. Definitely. It matters 100%. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Game Changers. We hope our discussion with Bob Harris provided valuable insights into his experience and the realm of fantasy football. Please join me for the next episode on Wednesday, January uh, maybe 20 something. I totally forgot what day it's going to be. I'm going to feature Says Me on Twitter, which is AKA Rich, as my special guest. I would like to express my appreciation for Evan Egi, JC, and the whole TSA team for their ongoing support and for facilitating this platform, for sharing authentic stories. And special thanks for JC for his essential contribution behind the scenes. I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review, as your feedback is key for my improvement and outreach. Follow us on social media and for more updates on upcoming episodes, and become part of our community, the Sports Affiliation, where all are welcome. Until next time, continue challenging the game and leaving your mark. This is Carla and Bob Harris signing off. Have a blessed evening.